I welcome this kind of examination because people have got to know whether or not their president's a crook. Well, I'm not a crook.
Watergate was a national scandal that defined a generation and influenced American politics forever. It's an extraordinary story of heroes and villains, truth and justice, lies and cover-ups, and a catastrophic fall from grace of the most powerful person in the country, the president.
God bless America.
It all started with a curious crime.
The Watergate Break-In. We've all heard of it, but do we know the real story?
Get your hands up or I'll blow your head off.
The investigation of this crime led to a series of explosive revelations.
What began as a bizarre break-in came to reveal a conspiracy that stretched to the very top of the United States government.
Here was the abuse of presidential power. This went to the heart of the Constitution.
Watergate devastated the presidency of Richard Nixon.
Not only in this country was it the only story.
Yeah.
Around the world.
So how did a botched burglary become the thread that would unravel the White House? And what about this case still remains unanswered to this day?
I'm Don Wildman. I've explored the world's greatest mysteries, examined rare artifacts and epic monuments.
That is unbelievable.
Now, I'm digging deeper into some of the most perplexing and famous cases in history. My goal, to get closer to the truth.
Let's burn this place down. Burn it down.
On this special episode of Mysteries at the Museum, the Watergate Scandal. The first step to investigating Watergate is to look at the man whose legacy it defined, President Richard Milhous Nixon. Nixon was a career politician. He was intelligent, tenacious, and fiercely ambitious. Nixon had been a member of the House of Representatives, a senator, and spent 8 years as vice president to then President Eisenhower.
So help me God.
He took office as president in 1969, and in '72 had his sights set on re-election. But during the next 2 years, Nixon's life would change dramatically.
1972 would mark the beginning of the end of Richard Nixon's political career, thanks to Watergate. So what was the Watergate scandal? What could be so bad that would force a president to walk away from office? What happened?
To find out, where better to start than where it all began? The Watergate Hotel and Office Complex in Washington, D.C.
On June 16th, 1972, a group of 5 men gathered at this very hotel. They were preparing for a top-secret and highly illegal operation. What they were about to do would have consequences that would ripple to the top of government and on into history.
In the early hours of June 17th, a security guard patrolling the parking garage of the Watergate office complex found a stairwell door taped open. He removed the tape and secured the door, but just over an hour later, he found the door had been taped over again. Thinking this suspicious, he called the police. One of the officers who answered that call was John Barrett. He was just 24 years old at the time, and tonight he has returned to the scene of the crime.
Hey, Don.
Hi.
How you doing? I thought I'd find you here.
Nice to meet you.
Yeah, same here.
So this is the space, isn't it?
This is it. This is exactly right here is where I actually caught them.
You're kidding me. Describe for me first what scene you walked into. What are you actually looking at here?
You ever heard of this hair sticking up on your back of your neck?
Yeah.
Well, I didn't like this thing right from the get-go. When we initially came in, the room was absolutely in disarray. It appeared that somebody was looking for something and had thrown papers, files. I mean, it was just a complete mess.
You're walking into what is potentially a very dangerous situation here.
Oh, yes.
You don't know if these guys are armed and how many are here.
That's right. as I was waiting for my two partners to come down the hallway. I had searched 2 cubicles. I realized at some point, if anybody was here, they would have to be in this 3rd one. As I hung back, I saw an arm right next to my face, literally right next to my face.
Wow. What do you say?
I said something to the effect, get your hands up and come out of there or I'll blow your head off. We had 10 hands. 5 people with their hands went up.
But what really stood out to John and his partners was what the 5 men were wearing and where they had been caught. The men, all dressed in suits, had broken into the offices of the Democratic National Committee, the DNC. In the lead-up to the 1972 election, this space in the Watergate office complex was the headquarters of the DNC. So what were 5 smartly dressed men doing sneaking around here at night?
This was an unusual crime to be walking into.
Most definitely.
And things were only going to get stranger from here on in. The police discovered that the burglars had booked a room in the adjoining hotel section of the Watergate complex. And what they found inside that room would take this story in an even more troubling direction.
So this is it. I mean, it's incredible. This is the room where the burglars stayed, where they prepared and plotted their operation. They got the whole place set up like it's 1972. All the furniture and the lights, all of this could have been here that infamous night. It's wild to imagine those burglars were standing right here.
When the police searched the belongings of the burglars, they quickly realized that these were not your average small-time crooks. They found tear gas pens, bugging devices, roll after roll of camera film, and thousands of dollars in consecutively ordered $100 bills. It all suggested that this was a well-equipped professional outfit, and that they had most likely been hired to break into the DNC. But why?
It seemed clearly apparent that all this was part of a larger operation. But to what end? And who were these men working for? In the months and years that followed, attempts to figure out who was behind the Watergate burglary would unveil an enormous criminal conspiracy and become the political scandal of the century.
The FBI immediately involved with the investigation. Soon, the burglars' identities were revealed. 4 Cuban Americans and 1 American. They claimed to be anti-communists, but wouldn't explain what they were looking for in the DNC. In fact, they wouldn't talk at all. But perhaps they didn't need to, because investigators quickly uncovered something in their possession that would speak volumes. They found that 2 of the burglars had address books containing the name Howard Hunt. For the FBI, this was a big clue. Howard Hunt was a White House consultant with very close ties to the Nixon administration. What did a White House official have to do with the Watergate burglary? It was a dramatic revelation that opened up a slew of new questions about who these burglars really were and what they were doing in the headquarters of the DNC. Keen to find answers to all those questions were 2 young journalists, Bob Woodward and Carl Bernstein of the Washington Post. So how would these 2 rookie reporters help topple the White House?
Watergate went from a small story to the biggest political scandal in American history. So big, there are still questions lingering today. Who was leaking information to investigators? What role did the press play in uncovering the scandal? And what new evidence could challenge the accepted version of the story?